NetCredit is here to say yes to a personal loan or line of credit when other lenders say no. Apply in minutes and get a decision as soon as the same day. Loans offered by NetCredit or lending partner banks and serviced by NetCredit. Application subject to review and approval. Learn more at netcredit.com/partner. NetCredit. Credit to the people.
Now streaming on Hulu, a wicked true crime.
It was a kidnapping, torture case.
A crime of greed and cruelty.
The men tortured the victim by beating, tasing, and burning him.
But it didn't end there.
And this is where it gets really horrible. The guy was cutting off my roommate's penis. It was like a bad dream.
This crime was horrific.
He's a psychopath.
Wicked Game, Devil in the Desert.
This was a story about greed, sadism, evil.
Now streaming only on Hulu.
Welcome to True Crime Garage. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Nick, and with me, as always, is a man who can sing Las Vegas Tango way better than Gary Burton. Here is the Captain.
Yeah, Tango Bango. It's good to be seen and good to see you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend.
This week, we are very happy to be featuring Silver Shoes Stout by the fine folks at Munkle Brewing Company in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina. Silver Shoes is a Belgian stout made with lots of brown sugar, chocolate, and roasted malts, and Munkle's House Abbey Ale yeast, ABV 6.1% garage grade, 4 out of 5 bottle caps. And let's give some thanks and praise to our good friends for helping us out. First up, a double-fisted cheers goes to Whit Wilson and Lacey Brown in Birmingham, Alabama.
And a big "We Like Your Jib" goes out to Brian from Harbor Beach, Michigan.
Next up, here's a cheers to Rhonda Webb in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yeah, and you can get you some Jen from the south side of Chicago.
Here's a cheers to Jenna from the seacoast of New Hampshire. And last but certainly not least, we have Tyler and Amber in Kodiak, Alaska. Everyone we just mentioned went to truecrimegarage.com, clicked on the pint glass, and filled up the old garage fridge for this week's shows. And for that, we thank you.
Yeah, BWERUN Beer Run. You need more True Crime Garage for your earballs. Yes, you do, my friend. And how do you get it? Well, you can go to Patreon, or if you listen on the Apple Podcast app, you can just hit subscribe. And Colonel, that's enough of the business.
All right, everybody, gather around, grab a chair, grab a beer. Let's talk some true crime. Monday, November 2nd, 2015. Around 12:30 p.m., a frantic 911 call came into the Anderson County Sheriff's Office. The female caller was sobbing. She tells the dispatcher, "Oh my God, I need somebody out here." "What's going on?" dispatch asks. Caller, "There's 4 people in my mama's house, and they're dead." Dispatch, "Who are these people?" Caller, "My mom, my grandma, my gammy, and my stepdad." The caller identified herself as Amy Vilardi. Minutes later, when Anderson County deputies arrived at the house, located in Pendleton, South Carolina, they found a horrific bloodbath inside. 3 people were found deceased in the family room. A 4th victim was found in the bedroom. 4 people had been slain. It was a massacre. All of the victims had been shot, but that didn't account for all of the blood. It was pooled under the 4 victims. It was smeared on the walls and furniture. It was tracked through the house via foot and shoe prints. And this was no murder-suicide, which of course is what the deputies initially suspected. No weapon was found. This was a quadruple homicide by suspects unknown. What in the hell happened here? And just how long would that question plague the small town of Pendleton, South Carolina? This is True Crime Garage, and this is the Pendleton Quadruple Homicide. The murders took place at 2217 Refuge Road. This is a rural part of Pendleton, which is a tiny town of only about 3,500 residents. The Anderson County coroner told the media, quote, "This was very violent, very, very violent deaths on all four of them," end quote. The coroner is Greg Shore. He estimated that the four had died on Sunday afternoon between the hours of noon and 3 p.m. By the time that Amy Vilardi found them, they had been dead for at least 1 day's time. The house that the victims were found in was a modest cream-colored double-wide mobile home with maroon trim. It was all decorated up for Halloween with glow-in-the-dark skeletons hanging on the trees and colorful, spooky decals in the windows. In the sizable front yard sat an Adirondack chair, and an ADT security sign were among the items surrounded by crime scene tape. Whoever went into this home and killed the family, obviously they were not deterred by the notion that the security system may have been in place. All four victims lived at this home. Since no one who lived in the home was alive to give consent, the sheriff at the time, John Skipper, wisely ordered the investigators to obtain a search warrant before commencing their investigation. Captain Gaylord Major of the Anderson County Sheriff's Office told the local paper, this is the Anderson Independent Mail, quote, "This is going to be a very meticulous and thorough process. We're looking for evidence. Anything we can find at this point, hair, fibers, anything."
Well, and like you said, this property is on a little bit of land, but there's also two residents. So I think that makes the investigation a little bit difficult.
There are some complexities with this investigation right out the gate. We have no sign of a break-in. And really, when you look at the evidence in the blood evidence, we have no sign of a major struggle. With all of the blood that we've discussed in the trailer, that seems like an odd statement. Well, plain and simple, this was an attack. Injuries, blood, and other evidence is telling investigators that there was little in the way of a struggle or altercation. More of an attack, and these poor victims had little or no chance to defend themselves.
Well, I think the other difficult thing is figuring out the timeline.
Nothing seemed out of place with inside of the home. And as said, we have doors and windows that had not been pried open. And what the papers were reporting, Captain, was that the house had not been ransacked. The thought was that it was as though someone had a serious grudge against the victims or one of the victims, right? So this was just targeted violence. And this is odd, to say the least. These victims were esteemed members of the Pendleton community. In fact, they were senior members of this community. Mike Scott, one of the victims, was 58 years old. He worked at the South Carolina Department of Transportation. His wife, Kathy Scott, was 60 years old. She stayed at home to take care of their elderly mothers, Mike Scott's mother and her mother, who both lived with them. So these elderly mothers were killed as well. Barbara Scott, who was 80, Violet Taylor, Kathy's mom, who was 82. Anderson County and most other counties don't see many octogenarians slaughtered in their homes. This is not something that happens. This is a rare crime. So who would do this? Who of the four was the target? It's hard to believe that all four of them would be the target. I can't imagine that Violet and Barbara, both in their 80s, had a long list of enemies. But what about Mike and Kathy, 58 and 60 years old, respectively? Did they have a beef with someone?
law enforcement believes that Mike was taken out first, but he would be the threat to stop the attack. But that doesn't tell us who was the target.
Right.
Was it one of them or was it all of them? And then what would the motivation be?
Did they owe someone money? Were there affairs or possibly drugs involved? The sheriff's detectives were determined to find out these details about the victims and about the crime scene as well.
Well, and like you said, I don't think there was any sign of somebody ransacking the house. And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you can correct me, but they're found on a Sunday, and trick or treat was on the Friday, and there was still like a tub of candy out by the door. Normally that is either emptied by the people coming to get the candy, or you eventually put that away.
Well, you're right. The timeline is a little bit tricky here, and you'll see the listeners will understand why as we get through the details, but they were found on Monday, November 2nd.
Monday, not Sunday, sorry.
But you're fine, because the coroner was saying early in the investigation that he believed that they were likely dead by Sunday. Even put the time of death early Sunday to early afternoon Sunday. Now, a lot of information was released about the crime scene. We relied heavily on some episodes of Oxygen's Cold Justice show that was dedicated to this case. And in fact, they aired rather recently. These episodes kind of took over our research for the case because they ended up revealing a lot more than what was previously known about this case. So at the crime scene, like the captain pointed out, it was obvious from the blood evidence at the scene that Mike Scott was the one that was attacked first. So he was found lying face down on the living room floor by the coffee table. He's in his boxer shorts. His arm is kind of bent at an unnatural angle. And there's an absolutely massive pool of blood surrounding his head. And this pool of blood was totally undisturbed. There's no footprints or smears for the pool of blood. Based on the blood patterns and the body location and positioning of the body, Mike was believed to have been killed first. It appeared that he had been surprised while sitting on the couch with some lethal slashes and stabs to the neck and throat area. He had 6 sharp force injuries to the left side of his neck, with the longest being over 6 inches. His throat was essentially cut ear to ear.
There's a lot of baffling things about this case, but I think the one that stood out to me is that law enforcement is telling us they believe these victims were cut first and then shot. And I'm guessing they could tell this by the blood evidence. Like you said, there's these pools of blood, but they're not disturbed. We don't have footprints all over the house.
Then we have the 2 older ladies. They were also sitting on the couch, and this appeared that they tried to get away. They were caught and stabbed or slashed and fell to the living room floor as well. They were found lying side by side. Violet was nearly decapitated by a massive slicing wound to her neck. She was also shot twice. And she did have some defensive wounds to her left hand. Barbara had the most wounds of all. She had been stabbed 6 times in the neck, chest, and left shoulder. And as we had said, going through the gruesome details here, Mike, Barbara, and Violet all had their throats cut.
Yeah, wasn't the mother found in a different room?
Yes. So Kathy was... And it's interesting how they piece this all together. This is all very blood spatter evidence to tell them to kind of show and tell the story to the investigators of what may have happened and how everything went down. Because Kathy, it's believed that she was in the living room too when the attack started. She was barefoot. What happened is she got up and ran to her bedroom. And we know this because it's on her pathway to the bedroom, she stepped in blood on the way.
Right.
So the attack had already started. And that's why things are pointing to Mike and Barbara and Violet being attacked first. Kathy has the opportunity to actually get up and run And when she does so, she steps in the blood on her way. Bloody bare footprints staining the oak floor of the trailer showed that her trajectory as she turned and sprinted away from what was going on, the attack in the living room.
Didn't they believe she was trying to get to the bedroom to possibly get a weapon to defend herself?
Correct. Yeah. And what they figured out is that someone caught up to her. She was stabbed just once. This was in the right lung and fell to the bedroom floor. The blade went in several inches deep. Kathy had a bruise in the shape of a knife hilt at the top of her chest. Kathy was found dead on the bedroom floor. She was partially on her left side, her right arm like up over her face, but it wasn't the stab wound that killed her. She was alive when she was shot in the face and head. 2 shots double tap. Each of the victims had been shot in the face or head. At least one. Barbara's was a close contact wound with stippling and gunshot residue behind her right ear. But Barbara, Mike, and Violet were already dead when they were shot. The knife was the murder weapon. The gunshot seemed like a final FU or maybe a fail safe to make sure that they were dead.
Right.
Like the captain's pointing out here, and sorry that I'm going in a roundabout way of getting to it, but Kathy and Mike, who were technically the homeowners, right? Their mothers were older. They're in their 80s. They're living with them. And Mike is out working and Kathy's at home taking care of them. And they were known to own several guns. What cold justice would say is that it was determined from an empty holster found under the bed that Kathy likely tried to retreat to this bedroom to get a hold of this .38 caliber revolver to defend herself. It looked like the killer or the killers beat her to it. According to the show, the gun holster was found under the bed near Kathy's body. It was empty. The revolver was missing. The holster had a small drop of blood on it. And this is perhaps from when Kathy was stabbed. So you can kind of see this playing out. She gets up to run. She, lucky or unlucky enough, you can look at it either way, but it appears that Michael is attacked blindsided.
Right.
And then the 2 older ladies at least have the opportunity to start to get up, but they're stopped, they're attacked, and then Kathy goes running for this gun. Killer goes after her, stabs her in the lung. She drops. Killer grabs the gun and then is now using the gun. It looked to me like the killer used their own gun on these people.
So the question I was going to ask is, do we have information? Is it the same knife used on all the victims? Is it the same gun used on all the victims?
I don't have a lot of information on the gun, but the short of it, it appears that this gun, this .38 revolver that was found missing from the scene with a drop of blood on the holster, likely was used. And as said, 3 of the victims were dead before they were even shot. As far as the knife goes, here's a fact. We know that the killer used a knife on all 4 of the victims and then used a gun believed to have been lifted from Kathy or from her room. So the first thought is the investigators were wondering, were there 2 people involved, or, first this lethal slayer who's unafraid to use a knife up close and personal on these people, and then someone with enough angst or vitriol enough to shoot all of them for good measure. But as far as the knife goes, what we know about the knife is that the hilt marks. So it left when the victims were stabbed or attacked with this knife, it left bruising in the shape of a rectangle near the cuts and the stab wounds. And what that was telling the investigators was this wasn't like somebody just grabbed a steak knife out of the block in the kitchen and used it on them. This would have been a hunting or military style knife.
Yeah.
And you're correct, Captain. It's believed that that one knife was used on all 4 victims.
Law enforcement has a reason to believe that whoever did this is trained to do this.
Yeah, some other information about the crime scene. And this is a significant clue. Partial shoe prints in blood, bloody shoe prints were believed to have been made by the killer. So someone wearing sneakers had chased after Kathy. We have her bare footprints, and then we have the shoe prints. Drops of blood on top of the prints show that the prints were made by someone who was there when the murders were happening, when the attack was going down.
Right, not by the daughter that found her.
Correct. The prints were confirmed to have been left by someone wearing a man-sized. We don't get a size here. It's a man's shoe, they believe, and the make is Asics Speedstar running shoes. As said, the police say that the trailer was not ransacked. We have Kathy's jewelry box that was sat undisturbed. It appears that the murders were the intended outcome here. But one thing that we learn beyond the no force entry to the trailer, in the bedroom closet, there's a shelf that was off kilter. Investigators would learn that shelf at one time held a safe. That safe was not there when they are poring over this crime scene.
Well, and like I said, law enforcement is saying, for whatever reason, there's reason to believe that this individual knew what they're doing, or these individuals, at least one of the individuals, knew what they were doing. And this is when they started looking into, okay, what's the motive? Because this wasn't a home invasion to steal a bunch of stuff. There's not a bunch of stuff stolen, but possibly this safe is stolen. So is the motivation money, or is it possible that somebody had a bad gambling problem, or is this just out of pure hate?
Yeah, I'm looking at this thing and wonder if it's not a multitude of a lot of that, because how brutal this attack and how these people were killed, how could you not hate them, right? How could the killer not have some kind of hate for them in their heart? But you talk about motive. This is a very rural area. There's not a lot of people that live there, but when you see a bunch of flashing lights and hear a bunch of sirens, people have a tendency to gather. A crowd attracts a crowd. And when you get ambulances and a bunch of police vehicles outside of this big yard, this big plot of land with the double wide on it, people started to gather around. Somebody had kind of shouted to some of the first responders, wondering if it could be a murder-suicide that they were responding to. And the coroner, of course, this early in the investigation, they don't want to show anything, right? They don't want to show their hand. They know very little at this point. So the coroner tells the crowd, or at least some of the people in the crowd, we don't know, which is the perfect response for that time, right? You're not being rude to any of the people that are gathering. This is people that are a community that's concerned. You're not being rude to them, but you're also not giving up any information. And what we do know is that at that time, they did know that the killer was someone from outside of the house. They did not find the gun or the knife at the scene. And had it been a murder-suicide, the weapon used will be found at the scene. So the killer was someone from outside of the house, someone whom the police believed wanted to leave no witnesses. This message is sponsored by Greenlight. As your kids get older, some things about parenting get easier. Like, you don't have to make every decision for them. Hopefully, they make good decisions on their own. Others don't. Like having that conversation about money. The fact is, kids won't really know how to manage their money until they're actually in charge of it. That's where Greenlight can help. Greenlight is a debit card and money app made for families. Parents can send money to their kids and keep an eye on kids' spending and saving, while kids and teens build money confidence and lifelong financial literacy skills. Millions of parents and kids are learning about money on Greenlight. It's the easy, convenient way for parents to raise financially smart kids and families to navigate life together. Look, we send our kids off to great schools to learn a good deal of things. They are teaching little to nothing about money, about finances and money management skills to our children. That is a parent's job. That is your job. Greenlight is a fantastic tool for you to use to teach your kids about saving money, about financial goals, and about achieving those goals and financial literacy. Start your risk-free Greenlight trial today at greenlight.com/garage. That's greenlight.com/garage to get started. greenlight.com/garage.
Hiring quickly is a common struggle for employers, especially with the time it takes to sift through resumes and find the right candidates. If that's a challenge you're facing, ZipRecruiter is the solution you need. ZipRecruiter is a hiring site employers prefer the most, based on G2. Their advanced matching technology quickly connects you with top talent, saving you both time and money. In fact, most employers who post on ZipRecruiter find a quality candidate within the first day. Plus, you get ZipRecruiter's pre-written invite to apply message to personally reach out to candidates who would be perfect for your job. So relax, employers, and let ZipRecruiter speed up your hiring. See for yourself. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/garage right now to try it for free. That's the same price as a genuine smile from a stranger, a picture-perfect sunset, or a cute dog running up to you and licking your hand. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/garage. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Well, it's officially too cold to do anything. The upside, you can cocoon yourself in soft and cozy Bombas socks, slippers, and underwear all winter long. The secret is in their fabrics. We're talking about the good stuff, like merino wool, which feels as cozy as a ski lodge. But if you want to brave the cold on the slopes or on a snowy run, Bombas has athletic socks built for that too. But it doesn't matter which Bombas you get, because every Bombas item gives back. For every item you purchase, Bombas will donate another item to someone facing homelessness. I love Bombas because of the quality. Bombas are comfy and cozy, but also heavy duty. These socks are built to last. My fave is Bombas athletic socks with a soft feel and the perfect firm fit. So try Bombas now. Head over to bombas.com/garage and use code GARAGE for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/garage. Code GARAGE at checkout. Let's be honest, raising kids today feels like navigating a maze of unhealthy options. It's like every day there's a new spooky ingredient to watch out for the foods we eat. Take out the guesswork with Thrive Market. It's like having a personal guide to healthier living for the whole family. From snacks and school lunches to pantry staples, everything they offer is 100% non-GMO and free from over 1,000 harmful ingredients. And with their on-site filters, you can shop based on what matters most to your family, like low sugar, gluten-free, organic, or high-protein options, all just a click away and delivered right to your door. When I'm shopping the Thrive Market at thrivemarket.com/garage, I utilize the low sugar and the high protein options. It speeds up my shopping, and it won't allow anything that I don't want to sneak into my shopping cart. Ready for a junk-free start to 2025? Head to thrivemarket.com/garage and get 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/garage. thrivemarket.com/garage.
All right, we are back. Tall cans in the air. Cheers to you, Colonel.
Cheers to you, Captain.
Well, and I think the reason why the public at first thought it could be a murder-suicide is I think there was some information that 3 of the victims were found in one room and then the mother was found in a different area of the house. And so people kind of, I think, assumed, well, maybe the mom killed these 3 family members and then went off and killed herself. But what would you find? You'd find a knife or you would find a gun beside her, and we don't find those items.
Well, in crime statistics too, murder-suicides are far more common than what this is, a quadruple homicide.
Exactly.
The autopsies revealed a lot of what we've already discussed. All 4 victims had been stabbed in the neck, upper chest, and shot. All 4 had defensive wounds on their hands or arms, but when we say there was not a great deal of struggle here, it's because this was a surprise attack. They had limited amount of time to defend themselves. So the defensive wounds were not like one would think that there would be a lot. Plus, also consider the age of 2 of the victims.
Right.
I know my age, right? I'm not moving like I used to 20 years ago. I cannot imagine how slow the old colonel's going to be when he's 80, 82 years old, and a surprise attack as well.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't want to mention it to you. You probably should go to a doctor. And
I could tell you. I could tell you were thinking it.
Seems like you have something going on with your back. But and I didn't misspeak. I think I'm correct that there wasn't really a disturbance around the blood around the victims. It was just the footprint was found leading to the mother.
Correct.
But you brought up something that I think is pretty fascinating. It has to be some kind of double motive, because if the motive, let's just say, we don't know because we didn't live in that house. We don't know if that safe was stolen. We don't know if
it was removed weeks or months prior.
Exactly. We just know that there's evidence that there was something there and somebody disturbed it. Who disturbed it? What is the motivation? If the motivation was just money, then you go in the house and you shoot everybody and you leave. You don't viciously and violently attack them with a knife as well.
Well, and the thing here is regarding that safe, it would have been family members and maybe even friends that would inform police, because when you show up and there's an empty shelf, the police don't know what was supposed to be on that shelf.
Well, it's the daughter that tells them.
Well, yeah, but we have other family members. I mean, we have four people here that were murdered. So there were other family members that would have been asked similar questions. And so, but we should point out here, by the time that Amy Vilardi found her family members killed,
right,
and called it into 911, they were all in the early stages of decomposition. So the timeline of when they were killed, it gets skewed a bit the more the investigators learn about the case. But one thing that they seem to be pretty convinced of was that they were killed the day before they were found, maybe even killed more than 24 hours prior to them being found. Now, we learned a lot about the victims from NBC's Dateline and on Cold Justice, and from coverage in the local newspapers, the Anderson Independent Mail and the Greenville News. Mike and Kathy dated in middle school and then reunited decades later. They had both been married prior to other partners. Kathy's husband died of cancer, but at the time of the murders, the two had been married for 9 years. It's said that they lived a simple life, sharing a community garden with their neighborhood. Kathy kept horses that she loved. Kathy and Mike doted on their grandkids. So this is Amy Vilardi's 2 children from a prior marriage. The senior couple spent a lot of time with these kids, even hosting sleepovers and taking them to church. Pam, this is Mike Scott's sister, and Barbara's daughter, was devastated by the murders, to say the least. And she said, look, somebody took the 2 closest people that I have in my life. She said, my brother, this is a quote, my brother was my everything. He was the constant in my life. She told Dateline that the 2 spoke every day, saying he was always checking on me and the girls, her daughters. He was like the caretaker of the family. The last time that they spoke, she tells police, was Halloween night, October 31st. Pam said her mom, Barbara, worked in the church nursery taking care of little kids and was a very godly woman and a wonderful cook. Kathy's cousin, Marjorie Morgan, told the Daily Mail that the victims were precious people and the family was unable to process what had happened. Quote, they were all just good people. I never would have imagined this in a million years. With regard to the 4 victims, there didn't seem to be any overt problems, stressors, or issues in their life as far as people being interviewed could tell. Life was simple. Life was good. Mike and Kathy appeared to be happy. Violet and Barbara spent their days enjoying their leisure time. So this was inexplicable and a horrific end to people living good, simple lives.
Yeah, it makes no sense. And like you said, you have to be a saint to let your mother live with you. And then on top of that, your mother-in-law also lives with you.
Shout out to the moms.
Yeah.
Shout out to the moms.
Everybody knows that we love our moms. That would be a tough situation, but it was probably a good situation. And nobody has a bad thing to say about any of these individuals. It just doesn't make any damn sense.
We've been doing this a long time. I guess I'm going to be surprised by this when we do episode 1500. Or if you can tolerate me long enough, episode 2000, should we get there.
Probably not going to make it.
I don't know when I'm going to stop being surprised by A, what horrible shit people will do to somebody else, and then B, how shocking and surprising these things always are. To the latter part of that, thankfully, thank God, these are rare crimes. A quadruple homicide, rare crime. Maybe it makes sense that we're still surprised when we hear about these horrible things. But we've got to learn more about what happened here, and so do the sheriff's office. And, of course, they're going to be interviewing everybody that they can find. One of the first people, obviously, that's going to be interviewed is Amy Vilardi. She found, when deputies responded to the scene, they found her outside crying. She's outside the house weeping, bodies laying inside. She's traumatized by what she had seen in the house, but she was able to speak with the sheriff's office and the deputies. She's explaining to them, Kathy Scott, one of the dead women inside, is my mother. Violet is her grandmother. Mike was her stepdad, and Barbara was his mother. The 4 lived together in this double wide trailer where they had been killed. She explains that her and her husband Ross were newlyweds. They had just been married, in fact, the week prior. Her and her husband Ross lived with her 2 kids from a previous marriage in a single wide trailer on this same property.
So not only is she shocked by what she's found, but it has to run through her mind a little bit that, hey, we're on this property. Are we in danger as well?
Yes. And so to describe this, we said that it's a large yard. And Kathy and Mike were the owners of the house and the land, the decedents. Amy, the daughter, her front door faced the back door of her mom's house. And the reports I have is that they were only about 50 or so yards away, these 2 trailers. Amy said that her kids had spent the previous week at her husband's parents' home, which is about an hour and a half away in Columbia, South Carolina. This was so that Ross and her could have kind of like a little honeymoon period. Amy told the investigators that she and Ross left town. They had to go out of town to go pick up the kids. This is on that Sunday, November 1st. She said they left around 5 a.m. and they were gone all day and well into the evening. On Monday, she says that she had noticed that her mom had not let out her dog. This is a cute little Chihuahua. His name is Buddy. She thought that this was very odd, so she picks up the phone, calls over to her mom's house, gets no answer. She says she left a message on the answer machine, but her call was not returned. So then her concern grows greater, and she decided, look, even though it's raining outside, she walks over to her mom's house, and she's outside. She can hear the TV on inside. She was startled to see the back door was open. Now, I think we need to describe this because I hate when these reports just simply say the back door was open, because you go, well, you could have seen that from your home, right? You should have been alarmed when you saw the back door open from your home. But the way she describes it to Fox Carolina 21, the day after the murder, she says, quote, "When I went to knock on the back door, the door just pushed open. So I walked in. It was dark. I flipped on a light, and there they were. They were just there. I don't understand why any of it has happened. I just keep thinking it's a dream I'm going to wake up from. Whoever did this, I don't see how they can live with themselves. So she says she walks around, she checks on each of the victims and then calls 911. And then she also tells police that she called her husband, Ross Vilardi, who was out doing errands. And she says, hey, get home ASAP. I need you to get home. I need you to get to our trailer and make sure that the kids are not looking out the windows.
What more information do we have on this timeline?
Yeah, so here we go. Some pretty detailed information here. Investigators initially believed that Mike Scott had sent a text on Sunday. This is to his boss at the Department of Transportation. And the text was pretty simple, just saying that he would be back to work the next day. He had taken off 3 days the previous week. I think that the initial misunderstanding of the text date and time in which it was sent caused the confusion for the possible time of death that we talked about earlier that came from the coroner. Remember, it was thought that this text came in on Sunday. Later, they sorted out that the text it was actually sent on Saturday at 1:30 p.m. on Halloween. So now, if you're basing the time of death less on science and more of circumstantial evidence, like interaction with the victims or people that may have seen the victims alive and well, if he's the one that sent this text, then they could have been killed as early as late Saturday. And then we also have Amy, the daughter, who says that she saw her mom and Mike Saturday evening, this around 8. And she said this is before she and Ross left for an overnight in Blytheville, South Carolina, first thing Sunday morning. Amy Vilardi, the daughter, said that she saw her mom and Mike on Saturday evening. And Amy and Ross both said that everything seemed normal with the couple at that time. They noted nothing unusual. In fact, they said that they saw one of them outside doing yard work, which was pretty typical. We also have some information from one of Kathy's brothers who says that they went to the home around 3:30 on Sunday, knocked on the front door, no one answered, and they left. So now we have all of this information where a text was sent on Saturday, another relative shows up at 3:30 on Sunday, no one answers the door. We can presume that they were dead by 3:30 on Sunday. I want to clarify something here, just in case any of the listeners get confused. When Amy arrived on Monday, she attempted to knock on the back door, and that was the door that just kind of came open. When the other relative arrived on Sunday, they knocked on the front door. So I don't think we should find it suspicious with anything regarding Kathy's brother, as far as we know at this point.
Yeah, but with 4 victims, everybody's inner circle, every single victim's inner circle has to be looked at.
The quadruple homicide was the first in the county in nearly 10 years. Investigators were brought in from the FBI, from SLED, which is the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, and the forensic unit from the Greenville County Sheriff's Office brought in additional help to assist Anderson County Sheriff's Office, who were working the case. This is Anderson County's case. The sheriff, John Skipper, and representatives from the coroner's office held a press conference a week after the murders. The sheriff admitted to still not knowing whether the murders were targeted or random. He said that they were still working to determine whether the killer was someone the slain people knew or whether they had just failed to be cautious and lock their doors. He reminded the public, quote, "We have no forced entry, which gives us an indication that it was someone known. I still know a lot of people who don't lock their doors. We don't know anything along those lines," end quote. Now, the sheriff did have to do a little backtracking here because there was a spokesperson for the sheriff's office that had told the public that this was an isolated incident and, quote, "as far as we know, there was no danger to the public." The sheriff, Mr. Skipper here, admitted that he could not say that this was true. Quote, "I don't know that they shouldn't be scared over this incident," end quote. We saw this in Delphi. We see this in most homicide cases. And of course, yes, most homicide cases, person A knows person B, person A kills person B, and it's a targeted murder.
Right.
That's just the statistics. It's the overwhelming statistic. But I always hate when someone on law enforcement is very quick to tell the news and tell the public, like, there's no reason to be concerned here for the public at large. This might have been an isolated. No, until you figure out who did this, everybody should be concerned. Everybody should be locking their doors. Everybody should be on a heightened state of alertness. It would be silly not to.
Well, if you live in United States of America, the murder capital of the world, maybe you should just be cautious all the time. Lock your goddamn doors.
True Crime Garage body armor now available on the website.
We sell mace. We sell it all.
Listen to this. This part might clue us into how concerned should we be about this missing safe, right? Because until you figure out a plausible, reasonable explanation for a missing safe, it has to have everything to do with the murders until you figure out differently. Right. It's Amy, the daughter, that provides valuable information to the sheriff's office. She tells them, and other people knew this as well, that Mike Scott and his, after work and his free time, he was a part-time dealer in valuable collectibles, jewelry, guns, rare coins, gold. He sold a lot of stuff on eBay, Craigslist, and Facebook. These items, from my understanding here, Captain, some of these he's buying and then selling these items. Some of these items he's collected and then later is selling them. But he's also selling items for like people he knows, right? He charges them a little bit of a fee and lists their items for them on outlets like eBay, Craigslist, and Facebook. Didn't include his address, but his phone number on these postings. And he did prefer to deal in cash. So it would be easy, relatively easy, for a would-be robber to find his house through one of these posts. We can say that based off of this fact. Previously, Mike had done some deals out of the house. This was until Amy and some other family members expressed a safety concern and said, hey, you shouldn't be doing this stuff out of your house. You don't know these people. So then Mike started meeting clients at different locations. This could be parking lots, even gas stations. But now we have robbery on the table. The day after the bodies were found, there was like a mini press conference that Amy was front and center for. This was from WYFF TV. And she was thanking the community for their prayers, but also criticizing law enforcement for their lack of transparency. She says, quote, I understand that they have a job to do, but as family members, we want answers. Apparently, Amy felt entitled to know what investigators were doing. The interviewer asked Amy what she would say to the killers if they were watching, and she said, quote, I can't say that on TV, and she gave a little smile. She also told a local paper that her husband and herself had been subjected to lie detector tests on November 2nd, the very day in which she found the bodies.
Yeah, that seems like protocol.
Protocol, yes.
She found the bodies. We're going to ask if it's okay. If you say yes, we're going to bring you in. If you say no, okay, that makes sense too.
Said to the paper that it made her feel like a suspect. She felt like they were being treated like criminals. She also openly complained about multiple guns having been collected by a police search of her home, the trailer at the back of the property. She said that police had confiscated a bunch of items from her home, and she willingly took the lie detector test, the polygraph examination, based on the condition that cash and her items would be returned to her.
Yeah, I have a question, and maybe you know this, maybe you don't. And if you don't, well, then you're fired. Step into my office.
I'm cleaning out my locker.
Fucking fired. Because we have the double wide on the property, and we have the single wide on the property, and we have this murder scene. So obviously, because there's a murder scene, boom, the police have the right to search the murder scene. But because it's on the same property, do they even need to get a search warrant for the separate unit?
That's a good question. Now, we know how thorough they were with searching the actual trailer that was the murder scene, right? Because they did their due diligence, and they were very smart to say, you know what, everyone that lives there unfortunately has been killed. We can't get consent that way, so let's make sure. Remember, we say this a lot. The best detectives out there let the evidence lead their investigation, number one, but number two, every action that they do along the way during the investigation, you have to keep in mind, everything that I do, will it hold up in court? Because you can get everything right. You can find the killer in these cases. But if you don't do things by the book, you won't get a conviction. And so when they got a search warrant to search the actual crime scene where the 4 lie dead,
Right.
they did go and get additional search warrants. And I believe it was as many as 5 search warrants that were filed relatively quickly and signed off on relatively quickly and then executed. And those search warrants did include Amy and Ross's trailer as well.
Well, I just want to make an announcement that we will have a part 2 to this episode because you answered that question so greatly that I have to let you stay on board for at least another episode.
Like they
Too
said,
kind.
like the young lady said in Ferris Bueller's Day Off to the principal, Ed, I want to thank you for your warmth and your compassion. Now, you want to get down into the muck and the mire of this, and
Yeah.
a lot of people love these kind of things, and so I want to make sure that I included it because this is where you start to go, CNC Music Factory, things that make you go, Remember, we have Amy who's talking to the newspapers openly, and good for her, right? John Walsh told us to keep all these cases in the media. And so she's talking to the media and she gets hit with a big question in a big spot. The Independent Mail reporter asked Amy about Facebook posts that she had made months prior, believes. I didn't record dates for most of these posts, but from my understanding, Captain, and what I reviewed, this was from months prior to the murders. But these were Facebook posts from the daughter made about her mother, Kathy, one of the deceased. And these were not posts that were, speaking highly of her mother. These older posts, in them, she publicly referred to issues she felt her mom suffered from. And she said things like narcissism and other various personality disorders. Vilardi said Facebook postings in which she criticizes her mother came from years of ill feelings. She said her mother had asked her not to talk about these ill feelings. Amy went on to say that for a time she had refused to let her mom see her kids without Amy present, but they had changed lately as the family had begun to make up recently, as she put it. Begun to make up recently are her words.
I don't understand people that air all their grievances. It's called Facebook, people. It's not called Festivus. And you don't need to air all your grievances to the whole world. I think my mom was a bad mom and I'm so mad at her. So I got to go tell my 30 followers on Facebook all about it.
Yeah. And it sounds like on occasion she's recording stuff on her phone. And look, that's some low down stuff right there, because there are people that do this, that they'll have their phone recording. Look, and if you're in a situation where somebody's abusing you or someone is tormenting you or doing things that are illegal, I'm all for it. Hit record on your phone and catch them in the act and then show it to somebody, because sometimes that's what it takes. I mean, we've seen some stuff where people were being abused at work, right? Being mistreated at a workplace that they can't afford to lose their job, but somebody's trying to push them over the edge and up in their face and cussing them out and things like that. That's a no-go, man. You can't do that. But to just set up and hit record on your phone and do something that's there. She recorded an argument. This is just a verbal disagreement. And it was actually her husband, Ross, who was in a verbal disagreement with the elderly Barbara Scott. Both are seen on the video, but the video ends with Ross saying, quote, "I hope you die." So if she's trying to make this recording to make her mother or the other family members look bad, in my opinion, Ross is the one that comes out looking like the total jerk here. So at some point, regardless if they've made up or not, clearly things were bad between Kathy and Amy at some point.
Yeah, just a PSA for anybody. Somebody goes missing in your family, somebody's murdered in your family, some crime happens to your family. You're a part of that inner circle. You're going to be looked at. I don't understand these family members that claim that they want a case to be solved, for justice to happen, and one are not cooperative with law enforcement, and then question why is law enforcement looking at us? It baffles me every time. It's like, well, they have to look at the inner circle first. That these are the pieces of the puzzle that they have. They have to start ruling people in or out, or even yes, no, or maybe categories. This is what they have to do. The more cooperative you are with law enforcement, and that doesn't mean you have to be dumb about it. If you want to get a lawyer and have the communication go through your lawyer, well, that makes a lot of sense. But the more cooperative you are, that they can rule you in or out, the sooner they can get to other individuals.
Yes. So a lot of this came from early in 2015, this bad blood situation. Now, I do want to be clear here that we're basing some of this information off of hearsay. This is things that other people either related to the news or to authorities.
Yeah, but the Facebook messages, that's proof of some bad blood.
One bit of hearsay that did make its way to cold justice was that at least one person had said that Amy and Kathy had actual physical fights, not just arguing or yelling at one another, but at least on one occasion, a physical fight, and went on to say that they believe that Amy used the kids weaponized the kids, right? Used them as weapons against her mother. The two often argued over money, in this person's opinion, and they thought that Amy would deny the grandmother seeing the grandkids when she decided that they weren't getting along. One thing that we do know that led to a big disagreement between the couples, right? We have stepdad and mother Kathy, and we have Amy and her husband Ross. In fact, this was before they were married, but had been living together. Mike and Kathy took the kids and they were watching them. They took them to a 4th of July festival, church festival. And when they come home, they go to return the kids to Amy and Ross, who had a bunch of friends over, had a little gathering, and Mike and Kathy believed that Amy and Ross were both tanked when they got there. And so they didn't feel comfortable leaving the kids with them. But of course, you can imagine how this plays out, right? A lot of times somebody might say, well, they're my kids. You can't tell me, what to do in my house.
They're the reason that they were drunk. The kids were. Having kids makes you want to drink. But it's one of those situations where it's like the daughter and her husband, they're a little bit, let's just call it what it is. They're a little bit losers. So they have to be somewhat dependent on her mother, but then also doesn't want the mother to have much involvement, or don't tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Yes.
Help me out. I want your help, but I don't want your advice. And that's normally just not how it works.
Look, here's the thing too. I want to be clear, because we got a lot of, can we do it again? Shout out to the moms. We got a lot of moms and dads out there listening, especially the ones that have younger kids, and you don't get many breaks from your kids when they're young.
And they're drunk right now. They're all drunk right now. I love the garage.
So I understand, when you get that rare free time, you might want to hang out with some friends if that's a possibility. It's 4th of July, man. I have beers on 4th of July. Fire up the stereo, the gas grill, and hand me a cold one, because I'm going to be doing some eating and drinking on that day to celebrate our independence, this beautiful country.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. But you also hope that somebody could be mature enough to make a quick phone call to grandma and say, look, We had some people over since you guys got the kids. Thanks for taking them to the festival. I've had a couple drinks. Could you keep them for the night? If not, no big deal. I can switch to water, right?
Yeah, well,
That's what you hope
right next door.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but none of that did happen. And so when Grandma and Grandpa come home and, in their opinion, find Amy and Ross tanked or half in the bag, they get into this argument. Now, this is going to be on display for the grandkids, going to be on display for the potential guests that were still there for the celebration. But this seemed to be a big argument because this is when Amy says, like, you know what? You're not going to see the kids, Mom, Stepdad. You're not going to see the kids. But what changed between 4th of July, that incident, and Halloween was, as said, Mike and Kathy were very involved with Amy's kids. They were little. They were 6 and 4 at the time. They would keep them overnight. They would take them to church. They'd buy them clothes, buy them toys, things like that. Like, they're very involved. And what changed here was that in late October, it appears that they made up. So what happened, from my understanding, is that at some point, Grandma and Grandpa want to see the grandkids very badly. And so Mike goes over, knocks on their Amy and Ross's trailer door and has a discussion with them and basically says that, look, we're sorry. Kind of falling on his sword, right? If this what it means to see the grandkids, then we'll let you guys think that we're to blame here. We'll try to we'll extend the olive branch, and we're sorry. We won't do this. Just trying to appease Amy so that they could see the grandchildren. And I guess late October was finally when Amy apparently decided to allow her family to see the kids. And she promised to bring them over on that Halloween night.
I want to thank you guys for joining us here in the garage. Big shout out to all the moms out there. So much more to get to. Stay tuned for part 2. Until then,
be good, be kind, and don't litter.
I'm Elliot Kalin, and I cannot wait to tell you all about the new podcast I'm hosting for Smartless Media. It's called Smartless Presents Clueless, a bite-sized, twice-weekly game show with a different main game and cliffhanger puzzle every single episode. And all this season, the contestant will always be Sean Hayes. That's the Clueless promise. Since you never know what the game will be, you won't want to miss a single episode. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.